Hello and welcome to the Steam Pilgrimage, the YouTube series where a cartoon avatar tries to turn his poor impulse control into an even poorer coping mechanism. If you're not familiar with the series, I am currently playing through every game on my Steam backlog to see if I can glean some insight into the world of a compulsive shopaholic, while trying to convince myself that it wasn't all a waste of time and money. Oh god. And in this episode we're going to enter uncharted waters as I discuss a game that I'm not just going to obsessively nitpick. I can't by law gush over any game that isn't Grandia or the self-deprecating nihilism police will come for me, so this is probably as close as I'm ever going to get. So colour me pleasantly surprised as we discuss the excellent Amnesia the Dark Descent, its effect on the horror genre, and the various ways games try to scare us. Well, not me of course, I don't get Oh god! Amnesia the Dark Descent was released in 2010 on the PC, and much later was ported over to the PS4, Xbox One, and even the Switch. So now little Timmy has another reason to involuntarily shit his pants on those long car trips. The game actually went through quite a few changes during development, and there's tons of videos on YouTube about it if you're interested, but that's not the focus of this video. The game focuses on a man with, and this may shock you, amnesia, who finds notes addressed to him by his pre-amnesia self telling him to seek a man named Alexander in the basement of Castle Brennenburg. While you explore, you find out that you're being chased by the Shadow, who wins the title of most original spectral antagonist name of 2000 and never. You then have to navigate the mansion, sneaking past enemies as you have no way to defend yourself, and solve some of the most organic puzzles I've seen in a game in a long time. You also have to keep track of your ever-declining sanity by making sure you don't spend too much time in darkness or experiencing mind-shattering events such as stumbling upon torture chambers, reliving horrific memories from your past, vivid surreal nightmares, encounters with grotesque enemies, and many more. So let's dive into the game that launched the career of countless reaction YouTubers. But first, let's take a second to talk about today's sponsor. Nord Skillshare Legends is a brand new online learning, fighting, and hacking resource. Have you ever wanted a 15-year-old wunderkind to teach you how to protect your browsing data from orcs? Are you tired of goblins stealing your credit card information while also insulting your inability to fix motorcycle engines? Then Nord Skillshare Legends is the online, interactive, 24/7 e-fix solution you've been looking for. Click the link below to register for just €10 a month when you sign up for the rest of your fucking life. Nord Skillshare Legends. If we don't sponsor you, you're probably a pedophile. There's a joke that's going to age really well. The story of Amnesia is told in two main ways. The first are triggered flashbacks that occur when you reach certain areas. These are usually disembodied conversations between the player and Alexander, as pieces of the atrocities you committed start to slowly return to you. And the second method of storytelling is audio logs. Okay. Technically, they're written notes, but they're all read out in the voice of the person who wrote it, so they're audio logs, okay? Go be pedantic in the comments. But, and I can't believe I'm gonna say this, they kind of work in this game. Wandering around a space station trying to figure out what happened to all the people in Alien was fun, until you read the title of the game and you realize, oh, it was probably the alien that killed them all. However, finding notes from your past self and trying to piece together your own motivations as a player is far more interesting and adds to both the story and world building. Same mechanic, different context. The game also uses environmental storytelling, such as blood trails leading away from torture devices that you can follow and find a big pile of bodies. In my opinion, this is a better way to tell the story of the victims of Castle Brennenburg, rather than having every random corpse have a detailed diary beside it, describing the method of torture and the amount of sexual arousal they shamefully experienced during it. After all, your own imagination could probably piece together a worse explanation. You sick bastard. You spend the vast majority of the game completely alone, bar the odd zombie trying to kill you, but, you know, they're not great crack. The mystery of what happened in the castle, why it was taking place, and the eventual realization of the horrors that you committed that led you to hide your own memories so that you could actually have the mental fortitude to save yourself, really drew me in. The game's three endings are actually nicely ambiguous, and this is the time to skip if you want to avoid spoilers. Go on, no, you can do it. I'll give you a second. Bruce Willis was dead the whole time. If you collect a lot of the diary pages, they begin to cast aspersions on your true motives. You eventually find a living spirit trapped inside a husk body named Agrippa, and you can choose to help this person by cutting off their head for them, and then carrying it around with you. You see, it turns out that Alexander was actually a being from another dimension trying to get home, and that the only way was to reopen the portal to his world And apparently the only way to do this was to torture a bunch of people so that their blood would contain something called vitae, and this will somehow open the port. You know, it's bad guy stuff. He's the bad guy. But Agrippa might also not be as trustworthy as he seems. I initially chose this Save Agrippa ending, which has you being promised by a deity that they'll save you for all of your help. I then went back and reloaded my save file and played through the other two endings, safe in the knowledge that my initial choice was the good ending. But then I started to think a little bit more about the other endings. In one, you get to let Alexander go, and it kind of seems like the worst ending, but then when you really think about it, I mean, Alexander was brought here against his will, and considering he's not human, it makes sense why he has such little empathy for us and why he can slaughter us so easily. I mean, if you were trapped on a desert island and the only way to get off for some reason was to kill hundreds and hundreds of chickens, you'd probably do it. Unless you're a vegan, of course, in which case, you know, have fun dying on Chicken Island, I guess. And then the final ending sees you neglecting both of them and just taking your revenge, finally allowing you to escape the castle. But do you really deserve a happy ending after all the horrific things you did? Or were you being controlled? It's this kind of genuine ambiguity that stems from the questions you as the player have about the entire situation that makes this one of the best game stories I've played through in a good while. None of the endings made me feel particularly good or comforted, and that really works in with the desperate tone of the game.
Some things mustn't be forgotten. The shadow hunting me. I must hurry.
Just like Alien Isolation, this game is a horror puzzle game where you try to avoid enemies rather than take them head on. And this wasn't the first game to do this, with the Clock Tower games being some of the first to take this helpless approach. However, where games like Clock Tower and Resident Evil use fixed camera angles to create a feeling of claustrophobia, as well as draw your eye to the big scary monster, Amnesia was one of the first to put this into a first-person setting. And they must have done something right because you can see its influence carry over into the likes of Alien Isolation, Outlast, Slender Man, Master Reboot, and probably a bunch more other indie titles. So when you can look anywhere you want, the game needs new ways to make sure that you see the horror. Occasionally as you're walking around, the controls of the camera will be taken away from you to point you towards danger or something scary. This could have been a really cheap cop-out, but it's also usually accompanied by quite a loud noise, giving you the feeling of jumping or being startled like you would in real life. At other times they'll use very clever level design, such as very long corridors which naturally draw your eye to certain points of the map. And then seeing one of these horrifying events has a toll on your sanity. When your mental state is low, the screen wavers, your movement sways, and you start to hallucinate, making it harder to run away from enemies, and make it to the next event that will recover your sanity. Horror games often use these positive feedback loops, or as some people call them, death spirals, where one failure makes the next more likely, to create a sense of dread and hopelessness. This can be quite a difficult mechanic to pull off, but it works very well for horror games, where the ever-looming threat of death is used to stress you out and keep you on your toes. And the hallucinations that you experience are nicely contrasted by some of the immersive aspects of the game, especially in how you interact with objects. Doors are opened by holding left click to grab a hold, and then you can use your mouse or simply walk forward to push the door open gently or forcefully. And the same applies to physics objects. Small objects such as rocks can be picked up, but larger objects like boulders or beams have to be clicked on and then dragged by moving the player character. You can tell that a lot of time went into making the controls as intuitive as possible in order to mimic actual human movements. This does a great job of breaking down the barrier between the player and the character and makes you feel the fear and dread that they do. Oh, and by the way, did I mention that the main character's name is Daniel? Yeah, that increased the fear factor for me by about 100%. Playing while not named Daniel may achieve different results. Not everyone can be named Daniel. Your results may vary. Occasionally while playing, I would see an object, turn my back, and when I looked around, the object was gone. And by the end of the game, I was genuinely questioning whether the game was playing tricks on me, or my own mind was. A feeling further amplified by the sheer isolation you feel while exploring. And then to top it all off, the sound design in this game is really something special. Although this is not too surprising for a game in this genre. Poor audio design in a horror game can make or break an otherwise cohesive experience. As if the music is too jolly or upbeat, you lose some of the dread, but at the same time, if it's constantly dreary, it can just drain you and turn you away from the game entirely. Just like a good orchestral performance, the horror in music games has to provide the right balance of peaks and valleys. The chase music in certain sections as you're expected to run from some unseen threat get the blood pumping, and are nicely contrasted by the hopeful flourishes that accompany you reaching a significant milestone and replenishing your sanity meter. But for the most part the music is absent, giving space for all the creepy bumps in the night that you can expect from these types of games. You'll constantly hear the sounds of screaming, women crying, or ominous mechanical devices turning. I really like how all of these sounds tend to be off in the distance, making you think, maybe I'm not all alone here, only to find empty rooms and cells when you investigate. Occasionally when your sanity's low, you'll hear the sound of whispering coming from behind you, or flies buzzing inside your skull. I really like the subtlety of the sound effects here, as a lot of horror games will just use loud noises to make you jump. In my Alien Isolation video, I mentioned that my favourite part was the start before we knew the alien was definitely now a threat. Not knowing whether I was in danger was far more nerve-wracking than just evading a known entity. Throughout Amnesia, I counted about 5 to 10 enemy encounters in total, but I always felt like I was in danger. Spreading out the enemy placement like this led to a tense gaming experience where every time I finally thought that I could take a breath, I would receive a swift kick to the sanity meter. When looking directly at an enemy, your vision becomes further obscured and you quickly continue to lose sanity, meaning you need to look away from the enemies you're trying to sneak around. All of these mechanics together make you feel scared, helpless, and desperate to see that comforting blue light that means you've made progress, but still wondering when the next danger will present itself. Some games can be expansive and disparate, throwing everything they can at you and never letting you sit on one idea or concept for too long in order to keep your attention. Amnesia, on the other hand, is the result of a tightly focused artistic vision. I mentioned earlier that the game went through dramatic changes throughout development, and it seems most of these changes involved peeling back everything that wasn't necessary. Combat was taken out. Potions that restored your sanity were taken out, etc, etc. What you end up with is an eerie and immersive walking sim essentially. And that's not an insult. Amnesia isn't afraid to leave you hanging and wondering when, if ever, you're safe to complete the next puzzle, or if you have time to stop and catch your breath. It evokes both the feeling of isolation and of being chased. The game isn't perfect, there are a few issues with some of the puzzles being a little obscure, and the game is a little bit on the short side. But considering you can get it right now on Kinguin with its less acclaimed sequel for about €2, it's cheaper and more holistic than a box of laxatives. Thank you very much for watching, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want to see more, you can subscribe or you can just head over to my channel to view more videos like this one. Next time we're in for a gaming double as I play through the entire Aquanaut series. So if you're interested in all that 4:3 aspect ratio goodness, then check back in next time. Assuming I can actually get these nearly 20-year-old games to work on Windows 10. If not, then I might use the new Steam library recommendation feature because, come on, let's be honest, Steam probably knows me better than I do. Either way, there's gonna be a new video, so check back next time and keep hacking away at that backlog.